Imagine it's like 9 o'clock at night. The house is finally quiet. You're tucking your 6-year-old into bed. The day is winding down. And out of nowhere, they just ask a question that makes you completely freeze.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
Right. They ask, why do people look different? And in that exact fraction of a second, your brain is just doing like a million calculations.
Oh, totally. Because
Yeah.
what you say next doesn't just answer a momentary curiosity. You are essentially, well, you're installing the baseline code for how they'll view humanity, categorize differences, and really just navigate the world for the rest of their life.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. It is the absolute definition of a high-stakes conversation. And the fascinating part is that the kid asking the question has absolutely no idea how heavy the implications are.
Yeah, they're just asking for data. They have no clue.
Right. So today we are exploring a piece of source material that is incredibly brief, but honestly, it's emotionally dense. We have excerpts from a manual called The Architecture of Human Diversity, A Parent's Guide.
Which is a fantastic title, by the way.
It really is. But we don't just have the text of what to say. We actually have the specific audio directions and the narrator commentary that dictate how these conversations are supposed to sound and feel.
And that provides this incredible meta layer. I mean, we aren't just analyzing a script here. We are actively analyzing the psychology of the delivery itself.
Right, which brings us to our mission today. We want to unpack this layered age-by-age evolution of how we explain human differences to children. But, and this is key, this goes so far beyond just parenting.
Oh, absolutely. It's about human communication across the board.
Yeah, exactly. We're exploring what this progression teaches us about creating emotional safety and like how our brains process incredibly complex concepts as we grow. Because the central premise of this guide is wild.
It really is.
It argues that a single, simple question, why do people look different, requires entirely different communication tools depending on the neurological development of the person asking it.
Yeah, it serves as a perfect case study in matching your message to your audience's cognitive and emotional capacity. Because, if you misjudge their capacity, the message just completely shatters.
It totally falls apart.
Right.
So let's get right into the mechanics of this. Before we even look at the actual words a parent uses, the guide forces us to look at the atmosphere.
The physical space.
Right. The narrative connection, the physical space, is prioritized above literally everything else. The source provides these explicit audio directions, calling for let me quote this, a soft, cinematic nighttime room tone.
Which is so specific.
So specific. And the narrator explains that these deep questions surface when the house is finally quiet and, quote, the rush of the day fades into a warm stillness. The stated goal is to create a space of emotional safety for their innocent curiosity.
Well, we have to look at the underlying biology of that environment, right? The text is implying that the physical room is doing, half the heavy lifting for the communication.
Oh, interesting. How so?
So, during the day, a child's brain, really, any human brain, honestly is operating in a highly reactive state. It's noisy, it's bright, there are physical tasks to perform.
Yeah, you're constantly fielding ground balls.
Exactly. The brain is constantly processing sensory inputs and managing the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight, flight, or play mode. It's all about immediate reaction.
There's basically no time to ponder the overarching rules of the game when you're just trying to play it.
Precisely the issue.
Yeah.
But in that warm stillness, the guide emphasizes the environment forces a biological shift. The noise floor drops.
Right.
The parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, takes over. The guard is down. The child feels physically safe, which is the absolute neurological prerequisite for feeling intellectually and emotionally safe enough to voice a vulnerable question.
Wow.
Yeah, the quietness of the room literally mirrors the psychological space required to process big, potentially overwhelming concepts.
If you're listening to this right now, think about your own life. When do you have those deep existential thoughts? It is almost always at 2 in the morning.
Every single time.
Right. The emails have stopped, the TV is off, you're staring at the ceiling, and suddenly your brain has the bandwidth to ponder the meaning of the universe.
Yeah, the deeper signals can finally break through the static.
So, based on this text, is the guide suggesting that creating this specific environment, this warm stillness, is an actual prerequisite? Like if a kid asks this exact same question in the middle of a chaotic grocery store, does the script still work?
The guide heavily implies the script would fail in the grocery store. I mean, the stillness is the canvas the words are painted on. If the canvas is chaotic, the message just gets lost in the noise.
That makes so much sense.
You really cannot bypass the physiological state of your audience and expect a philosophical concept to land.
Okay, so the canvas is prepared. The nervous system is regulated. Let's look at the first time this question actually emerges. Flowing directly from that intimate nighttime setting, we have a 3-year-old asking, in what the text describes as a quiet, innocent whisper, why do people look different?
Right, and this is where the architectural build really begins. And honestly, the restraint shown here is crucial.
Yeah, because the parent's answer, according to the guide, is simply, because people are beautifully made in many different ways.
That's it.
That's it. And the narrator steps in and notes that for a 3-year-old, this explanation must be simple and positive. The emotional directive is to, quote, plant a gentle seed of acceptance.
What is brilliant here is the deliberate absence of concrete facts. There is absolutely no mention of skin color, no mention of height or hair texture or genetics.
Nothing.
Right, it completely sidesteps the biological mechanics.
I found myself wondering, why wouldn't you just give them a basic biological fact here? Like, why keep it so incredibly vague?
Because we have to look at the cognitive framework of a 3-year-old. At that age, a child does not possess the operational capacity to understand alleles or melanin.
Sure.
When they notice someone who looks different from their family, they aren't conducting a scientific inquiry, right? They are running a threat assessment.
Oh, wow. A threat assessment.
Yeah. The human brain is hardwired to notice variance in our environment. So the 3-year-old sees a variance, and they immediately look to their primary attachment figure to tell them if that variance is safe or dangerous.
So the question, why do people look different,
Yeah.
is actually code for, is this difference a threat to me?
That is the core translation, exactly. By answering, because people are beautifully made in many different ways, the parent bypasses biology entirely and speaks directly to the threat assessment center of the brain.
They're just establishing a baseline worldview of positivity.
Yes. And the guide reinforces this by instructing the parent's voice to be, quote, soothing, with a warm smile in the voice. The tone delivers the safety, and the words just provide a gentle framework.
It makes me think of building a house. If you want a secure home, you have to pour the concrete foundation first. You don't stand in wet concrete and start trying to run electrical wiring and plumbing.
No, that would be a disaster.
Right. The wiring is the facts and the science. You just need the concrete to set perfectly flat and secure. So at age 3, you're just pouring the concrete. You're laying down a foundational reflex that says difference equals safe.
That is a much more accurate way to visualize it. The child just doesn't need the wiring yet. And, if you try to install it too early, you compromise the integrity of the whole foundation. You overwhelm them.
Right. But time inevitably passes. Biology catches up, the visual cortex develops, and the guide moves us to age 6.
Which is a huge jump.
Massive. That simple concrete foundation is no longer enough. The narrator notes that because their, quote, eyes take in more of the world, the parents' answer have to expand to match this new visual reality.
Yeah, the child's observational skills have upgraded from abstract feelings to concrete categorization.
So the 6-year-old asks, why do people look different? And the text describes their tone as curious, unhurried. And the parent's answer evolves drastically here. The parent says, people can have different skin colors, hair, eyes, and sizes. That's part of what makes the world interesting and beautiful.
It's so direct.
It is. The narrator explains this is about naturally normalizing diversity, offering a cinematic, sweeping view of the world's beauty, and providing emotional reassurance that everyone belongs.
We see a massive structural shift here. At 3, the word different was just this nebulous concept. But at 6, the child recognizes specific physical boundaries. So the guide explicitly forces the parent to name them skin colors, hair, eyes, sizes.
But wait, I have to push back on this because there's a serious tension here. If we look at how many adults operate today, there's a widespread belief that explicitly pointing out physical differences to a child is actually risky.
Oh, the colorblind approach.
Exactly. There's a whole philosophy of being colorblind, where the idea is that if you don't draw attention to different skin colors or sizes, children won't learn to categorize people, and therefore they won't develop prejudice. So isn't there a danger that by explicitly listing these traits, the parent is accidentally teaching the kid to fixate on them?
That is a very common adult anxiety, for sure. But developmental psychology completely dismantles it. The guide is arguing the exact opposite, and it's all rooted in how the brain handles in-group and out-group dynamics.
Okay, walk me through that mechanism. Why does naming the differences prevent prejudice rather than cause it?
Because a 6-year-old's eyes are already taking in the data. They already see the different skin colors and sizes. You can't hide it from them.
Right.
If a child points out a physical difference and the adult shushes them or glosses over it or pretends not to notice, the child's brain registers that avoidance. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, flags it
Oh, so it backfires.
entirely. The brain says, the adult is acting weird about this novelty. Therefore, this novelty must be a taboo or a secret or a threat.
Wow. By trying to be polite, the adult accidentally programs the child to view the difference as dangerous.
Yes. The silence creates the stigma. The text says that naming these things naturally normalizes diversity. By calmly and clearly listing skin colors, hair, eyes, and sizes, the parent strips away the anxiety.
It neutralizes the threat detection.
Exactly. It tells the child, your eyes work perfectly, you see these things, I see these things, and it is completely normal.
And they anchor it immediately to positive abstractions, right? They name the concrete traits and then follow up with, that's part of what makes the world interesting and beautiful. They are taking the visual data and explicitly instructing the brain on how to categorize it.
Which is exactly the function of the cinematic sweeping view the narrator mentions. It zooms the child out. It frames physical traits not as defining barriers, but as mundane, beautiful variations in a massive landscape. It validates the visual reality while cementing the emotional belonging.
Okay, so we've poured the concrete at 3 with abstract safety. We've built the framing of the house at 6 by normalizing the visual reality. But the deep dive doesn't stop there.
No, it keeps going.
As childhood deepens into age 9, that visual normalization shifts into a demand for causality. The kid needs to know why the mechanics work.
This is the entry into the concrete operational stage of cognitive development. The brain is now capable of logical thought, understanding cause and effect, and processing historical time.
So the guide describes the 9-year-old as thoughtful, seeking facts. They ask the question again, and the parent delivers a fundamentally different answer. They say, people inherit traits from their families and ancestors. Human diversity is a natural and important part of our world.
A huge leap.
A really big leap. The narrator explains that the child is now ready for the science, while the parent gently reinforces inclusion using, quote, calm, emotional intelligence.
Look at the sheer density of the vocabulary upgrade here. Inherit, traits, ancestors. The parent is officially introducing genetics, biology, and generational history into the conversation.
But they managed to do it without sounding like they're just reading from a biology textbook.
And that is the crucial balance of this stage. You're synthesizing rigorous, factual vocabulary with deep emotional grounding. The phrase, natural and important part of our world, acts as the emotional anchor.
Right.
The parent has evolved from a protector to a factual guide, a teacher of reality. But the tone is explicitly described as honest, emotionally grounding.
It makes me think of a major operating system upgrade on a computer. The underlying hardware, the emotional safety, the sense of belonging, that warm stillness we established at age 3 and reinforced at age 6, that hardware has to stay exactly the same. You don't throw out the machine.
No, of course not.
But the software, their vocabulary, their scientific understanding, their ability to process complex biological causality, that gets a massive, highly sophisticated upgrade. You install a complex program on top of secure hardware.
That is an incredibly precise way to look at human development. The emotional intelligence the text refers to is the adult's ability to know exactly which version of the software the child is currently running.
Okay, but what happens if you get the software versions mixed up?
Oh, you experience a system crash or profound alienation. If you try to run the age 9 software explaining traits and ancestral genetics on a 3-year-old's hardware, it crashes. They simply cannot parse the data.
It's just noise to them.
Exactly. But conversely, if you never upgrade the software and you keep feeding a 9-year-old the age 3 script of people are just beautifully made, the 9-year-old will instantly sense that you are holding back.
They'll feel patronized.
Highly patronized. They'll realize you're dodging the factual reality, which ironically damages the very trust you built in the earlier stages.
Because they know there's a biological reason, and your refusal to give it to them feels like deception.
Yes. Matching the communication to the cognitive capacity is the only way to maintain the integrity of the relationship.
This brings us to the final, and frankly, most surprising turn in this source material. We spent this entire time analyzing the architecture of the child's mind, how they adapt, how their brains process threats and logic. But the text suddenly pivots and forces us to look at the person doing the actual labor of this communication. We have to look at the parent.
Right, the architect themselves.
Yeah. The end of the source text shifts its focus entirely away from the child. The narrator speaks directly to the parent in a very intimate, deliberate pacing. It says, "Take a slow, quiet breath, exhausted parents. You are doing beautiful work and you're not alone."
It's so validating.
It really is. The text emphasizes that answering these difficult questions, being this constant anchor of reality, makes the parent a safe harbor.
It reveals the hidden dual purpose of the entire guide. I mean, up until this last paragraph, you could easily read this document as just a straightforward conversational manual, a tactical script for child rearing. But this final commentary exposes that it's also a vital lifeline of emotional support for the adult.
It completely validates the psychological toll of the interaction.
It has to. Because calibrating your communications, so precisely evaluating in real time whether the person in front of you needs the abstract concrete foundation, the cinematic visual normalization, or the complex scientific causality, and then delivering that exact patch flawlessly while maintaining a warm smile in your voice, that requires immense psychological labor.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is the active process of co-regulation. The adult is absorbing the child's uncertainty, processing it, and reflecting back total stability.
Which totally drains the battery of the adult.
Massively. Shaping a human's baseline worldview is a staggering responsibility. The text offers the parent the exact same emotional reassurance the parent is instructed to offer the child. It provides the adult with their own moment of warm stillness.
You know, I think this is the point where this text transcends parenting entirely. If you're listening to this, apply this to your own life. Even if you don't have kids, you are playing this role. Think about the last time a friend came to you in a crisis or a junior employee came to you totally overwhelmed. You're acting as their safe harbor.
You're absorbing their chaos.
Yes. And you probably realize pretty quickly that throwing pure age 9 logical facts at a friend who is in a state of emotional panic just doesn't work.
It never works.
You have to walk them through the stages. You have to establish the age 3 emotional safety first before you can help them logically problem solve. We all occasionally find ourselves exhausted by the responsibility of calibrating our communication to stabilize someone else. Holding that space takes an incredible amount of energy. But, as the text reminds us, it is beautiful work.
If we step back and view the entire progression we've explored today, we are looking at a remarkably cohesive strategy for human connection. It begins by controlling the physical environment, the still, warm quiet of a nighttime room, as the biological prerequisite for deep communication.
Right. Dropping the noise floor so the nervous system can finally relax.
From there, we map the evolution of the answers. At age 3, it's entirely about pouring the foundation with broad, positive statements that neutralize the brain's threat detection.
The abstract safety.
Exactly. At age 6, it expands to visual normalization, explicitly naming differences to remove the stigma of taboo and foster a cinematic sense of belonging. And finally, at age 9, integrating scientific causality, bringing in facts, traits, and ancestry while maintaining the emotional grounding. All of this is facilitated by a highly attuned, albeit exhausted, adult providing that safe harbor.
It really is a masterclass in structural communication. And the ultimate takeaway for you, listening to this deep dive, is that this architecture isn't just a trick for talking to kids. It is a universal superpower. Whether you're leading a corporate team, teaching a classroom, or just trying to navigate a sensitive conflict with your partner, the mechanism is the same.
It applies everywhere.
Recognizing whether the person sitting across from you currently requires emotional reassurance, a clear normalization of the visual facts, or a deep dive into the complex mechanics that changes the entire outcome of the conversation.
It is the fundamental difference between simply speaking words at someone and actually being understood by them.
Before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We just spent this entire deep dive mapping out how children build the mental architecture required to understand and accept human diversity. We looked at the specific, non-negotiable steps, the emotional reassurance at 3, the visual normalization at 6, and the factual causality at 9.
The structural framing of acceptance.
Exactly. So here's the question I want you to carry with you today. When we look out at the real world and we see adults who actively struggle to accept differences, adults who lack that fundamental sense of human inclusion, could it be that it's simply because they missed one of these architectural steps along the way?
Oh, that's a fascinating thought.
Did they miss the foundational safety or the visual normalization, or the emotional grounding of the science.
That really changes how you view a lot of conflicts.
It really does. And if they did miss a step, well, what would it actually look like to walk a fully grown adult back through this exact progression? How do you create that necessary warm stillness for someone who has already grown up?
That is a profoundly difficult puzzle to solve.
It is something to think about the next time your own house is quiet and the rush of the day fades away. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.